Hello everyone, it's good to see you all once again in this podcast. This time there is something very special. Today, this chapter is dedicated to two stories that are meaningful and that are told as if it were a common story. So, to start and without further ado, today we will have our first ghost story. This story belongs to my mother, and despite the fact that she tells it so called me to more sibling, and me it feels used with surprise to imagine such horrifying event. My mother tells it like this. I remember that when I was a child, in an old house of my aunt Lucina and my uncle Antonio, who were brothers and older adults, or a very advanced age. They never married, and they were single. They both lived together, and so that they would not be so alone, my mother used to stay with them to keep them company. My brothers and I were all left in a room that was the only one that had a slab, and they stayed in a small room with a red partition, roofed with sheet metal and doors. There was their stuff and everything they used to live. The slab room was more for visitors. I remember that it also had a corral full of sheep. They also had cows, and for that reason, I was afraid to go out the bedroom that was outside, in the furthest part of the room. One night, I couldn't take anymore, and I looked out to see if there were no cows outside. But just as I lifted the curtain that reserved at the door, I saw how a figure passed in front of me, at my eye level. It was like an old hat and that it moved as if it were flying at its ascent further into sky. Today I still have that doubt could it haven't been a really hard or was it something that hallucinated? Well, that was one of the stories that my mother shared with me from her childhood. This experience leaves me with my heart steady on and every time they tells me. But the one that follows leaves me thinking more than usual. The following story is also from my mother's childhood years, and she tells it like this. When I was little, my parents had a house in an area of my town called Kilometer 27. Some time later, we went to live in Santa Maria by order my mother, and the house was left alone. There were times when we went to check the house so that everything was in order. One side of the house there were some neighbors who were a married couple. The lady the lady was Mr. Rufina and Mr. Don Baltasar. Whenever we went to the house my parents come to visit them and to met in bed, then to drink alcohol. Night always fell and there was no way to return. So the men in bed used to spend the night because there was no furniture in my parents' house. I remember that they put a large mat on use and there we stayed. At night, I always heard that someone would start praying and the head of her from we were her sled. Now that I am an adult, I know that Doña Rufina was a witch, and that what she practiced were beliefs of her state that was Guerrero. Today I know that this was a cultural practice, but honestly, Doña Rufina was a bad person, and that she was most likely envious on my parents because the gentleman couple could never had children. We have reached the end of these short stories. I hope you enjoyed listening to them as much as I did. I send you many hugs and see you some sweet nightmares.